High on a mountain ridge, a lost city defies every assumption about ancient engineering. Machu Picchu stands as a monumental question carved in stone, built by a civilization without iron, without the wheel, and without any written records we can decipher. By the end of this journey, you will understand the incredible secrets that allowed the Inca to achieve this impossible feat. We will uncover how they moved mountains of stone and designed a city that could dance with earthquakes. What does it truly take to build a masterpiece that outlasts an empire? Machu Picchu was never intended to be just another city. Its placement on a nearly inaccessible mountain ridge speaks to a grander, more sacred purpose. This was a royal estate, a private retreat for the emperor and his court, far from the bustling capital of Cusco, but it was so much more than a secluded palace. It was a deeply spiritual sanctuary, designed to be in perfect harmony with the cosmos and the powerful mountain deities the Inca revered. This multi-layered vision, this master plan, is the key that unlocks the logic behind its impossible construction. Every stone was placed with intention, serving not one, but several vital functions at once. The same terrace that grew food for the elite also prevented the entire mountainside from sliding into the river below. The temple built to honor the sun god was also a precise astronomical instrument, its windows and altars capturing the solstice sun at the very moment it touched the horizon. Can you see how this changes everything? The Inca were not just building structures. They were weaving a tapestry of power, faith, and science into the very rock of the mountain. This unified vision demanded a level of integration we rarely see today, where every wall, staircase, and water channel had to fulfill a role in the royal, the religious, and the practical, all at the same time. This is why the city feels so complete, so perfectly resolved. It was conceived from the very first stone as a single living entity. This seemingly impossible location was a deliberate choice, a breathtaking act of defiance and devotion. The Inca did not simply build on this ridge in spite of the dangers. They built here because of them. They sought out a place where the earth itself was alive, a geological crossroads riddled with fault lines. This might seem like madness, but for the Inca, it was genius. Those same tectonic forces that could shatter a lesser city had already done the hard work for them. Over millennia, the shifting earth fractured the bedrock, creating a ready supply of precisely shaped stone blocks. The Inca were not fighting the mountain, they were listening to it, using the materials it provided. But the practical was always intertwined with the spiritual. This ridge was not just geologically active, it was spiritually potent. It offered a direct, unobstructed connection to the Apus, the towering mountain deities who controlled the weather, the water, and the very fate of the people. By building here, the emperor was placing his home within the domain of these powerful spirits, aligning his rule with their divine authority. Every structure, from the humblest wall to the grandest temple, was an act of communion with the sacred landscape. Can you feel the difference in that perspective? This was not an invasion of a wild place. It was an invitation to join a celestial conversation, to weave human ambition into the fabric of the Andes themselves. The city's resilience was not just a test of engineering, it was proof of divine favor, a sign that the Apus approved of this stone offering laid at their feet. That profound connection with the mountain demanded a foundation as intelligent as the vision itself. Look closer at those iconic green steps cascading down the slopes. They are not merely gardens, they are the city's secret weapon against collapse. This entire complex of terraces was a masterclass in geoengineering, a multi-layered system designed to solve three critical problems at once. At their core, these terraces were a giant drainage system. Each one was built like a sophisticated sandwich. The top layer was rich, fertile soil for growing the maize and potatoes that fed the elite residents. But beneath that soil was a layer of coarse sand, and below that, a deep bed of crushed rock and gravel. This entire assembly was designed to let water flow through it, not pool on top of it. During the heavy Andean rains, water would percolate down through the soil, through the sand, and into the gravel, where it was safely channeled away through hidden drains before it could ever gain the weight and power to push the mountainside into the Urubamba River below. The precise angle of each terrace wall was also a calculated decision. They were not built straight up and down. They leaned slightly inward, a subtle but critical design that shifted the immense weight of the fill behind them back into the mountain, not out over the cliff. This counterintuitive angle created a system of interlocking weights that locked the entire structure in place. Can you see the genius in this layered approach? The same structure that fed the city also anchored it. It turned a dangerously steep and unstable slope into a stable, sculpted platform. Without this terrace foundation acting as a massive retaining wall, the very ground beneath Machu Picchu would have simply washed away in a matter of seasons. The city's survival for centuries is a direct result of this unseen, subterranean brilliance, where every stone served a purpose far beyond the surface. But all of this architectural genius would mean nothing if the walls themselves could not stand. To truly understand the soul of Machu Picchu, you must look closer at the very skin of the city. This is the art of Ashlar Masonry, a breathtaking form of dry stone construction that remains one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. The Inca built without mortar, without any sticky cement to bind their stones. Instead, they relied on an almost unbelievable precision. Each block of granite, some weighing many tons, was painstakingly shaped using nothing more than harder stone hammers and simple bronze tools. Workers would patiently peck and grind the surfaces, slowly coaxing each stone into its unique, irregular form. The goal was not to create perfect cubes. It was to create perfect neighbors. Every block was custom fitted to the stones around it, their complex, multifaceted surfaces locking together like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The result is a joinery so flawless that for centuries, not even the thin blade of a knife can be inserted between them. Now, consider the sheer force of will this represents. Can you envision the sound of this work? The endless, rhythmic tapping of stone on stone echoing through the mountains, a symphony of patience played over generations. This was not quick construction. It was a form of meditation, a physical prayer made visible in rock. But this incredible precision was not just for show. It was the city's primary defense against the very earth it was built upon. When an earthquake strikes, a mortared wall is rigid. It cannot flex, so it cracks and collapses under the seismic waves. But an Inca wall is alive. During a tremor, the stones in a dry stone wall are designed to dance. They shift and sway, bouncing and settling back into place as the energy of the quake passes through them. The very lack of mortar is what makes them immortal. The walls of Machu Picchu do not fight the mountain's tremors. They move with them, and in doing so, they have stood for centuries while modern buildings have turned to dust. This was not just building. It was a profound collaboration with the forces of nature, a dialogue written in stone that we are only now beginning to fully understand. That rhythmic tapping of stone on stone had to begin somewhere, with the raw material for this grand vision. Just a short walk from the main plaza, tucked within the city's own footprint, lies the answer. The Inca built Machu Picchu from the very mountain it sits upon. They identified a source of perfect white granite, a dense and durable stone, right there on the ridge. This was not a simple gravel pit. It was a sophisticated quarry, a landscape of half-finished blocks and stone tools abandoned as if the workers had just stepped away for a moment. Here we face the first part of the quarry conundrum. How do you extract multi-ton blocks from solid bedrock without explosives, without iron tools? The Inca used a method that seems almost childishly simple, yet it was devastatingly effective. They located natural fractures in the granite and then exploited them. Workers would drill a line of small holes along a fracture using simple stone borers. Then, they would drive wooden wedges into these holes and pour water over them. As the wood swelled, it generated immense, consistent pressure, slowly and patiently coaxing the stone to split along a clean, predetermined line. It was a conversation with the rock, a patient negotiation rather than a violent extraction. But then comes the next, even greater puzzle. Once you have a block of granite the size of a small car, how do you move it? The wheel was unknown for this purpose, and there were no draft animals like oxen or horses in the Andes capable of such a task. The solution was pure, coordinated human power. Teams of laborers would likely lever the massive stones onto a bed of rounded logs, creating a primitive but effective roller system. They would then pull the stone with ropes, a grueling procession of men hauling their immense load up and down the dizzying, narrow paths that crisscross the mountainside. Think of the sheer physical exertion, the constant danger of a rope snapping or a log slipping, sending a multi-ton block careening into the abyss. This was not a one-time event, but the relentless, daily reality of construction. Every single stone you see at Machu Picchu, from the smallest foundation block to the massive stones of the Sun Temple, endured this incredible journey. It was a triumph of logistics and collective will, a testament to a society that could mobilize and coordinate human effort on a scale that still defies belief. That rhythmic procession of hauling stones was a symphony of coordinated effort, but the true conductor's secret lies in the very paths they walked. The Inca did not just move stones, they moved mountains, and they did it by mastering the landscape with a network of roads and ramps that turned impossibility into routine. Imagine a team of 20 laborers, muscles straining, inching a 10-ton block of granite up a steep incline. They are not dragging it directly over dirt and rock. The stone rests upon a series of rounded logs, placed side by side like a temporary wooden road. As the team pulls with ropes, other workers constantly run from the back of this slow-moving platform to the front, picking up the logs that have been freed and placing them back in the path. It is a continuous, grueling cycle of motion, a human-powered conveyor belt made of wood. This method, the log roller, is one of the most enduring theories, a testament to simple physics and immense human endurance. But on the sheer cliffs leading to Machu Picchu, even this method reaches its limit. How do you lift a stone straight up? Here, the Inca likely employed a system of levers and earthen ramps. Using long, sturdy poles as levers, small teams could pivot and nudge a massive block upwards, inch by agonizing inch, placing wooden cribbing underneath to hold each tiny gain in height. For larger-scale lifts, they may have built great earthen ramps against the mountainside, creating a spiraling path of packed earth and stone that allowed teams to walk their burdens to the summit. Once the city was complete, these ramps would have been dismantled, their materials absorbed back into the construction, leaving no trace of the temporary scaffolding that made the impossible possible. This entire operation was powered by a rotating labor force known as the Mida, a tax paid not in gold, but in work. Thousands of men from across the empire would take turns serving for set periods, a system that provided a constant, organized stream of manpower. Can you hear the collective sound of that effort? The synchronized shouts of teams pulling in unison, the steady groan of ropes, the rhythmic thud of logs being reset. This was not the work of slaves driven by a whip, but of communities fulfilling a shared, sacred duty to their emperor and their gods. Every stone set into place was a testament to that collective will, a physical manifestation of an entire civilization's belief, hauled into the sky one backbreaking step at a time. Yet this entire symphony of stone would have fallen silent without one vital element, a resource even more precious than granite: water. High above the city, nearly 800 feet up the mountainside, the Inca engineers located a single, precious spring. This was not a roaring waterfall, but a modest seepage from the mountain's heart. Their challenge was monumental: to capture this fragile thread of water and deliver it reliably to a city of nobles, priests, and artisans perched on the ridge below. The solution was a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, a system so precise it rivals modern waterworks. They began by constructing a stone collection canal right at the spring, carefully channeling the seepage into a primary conduit. From there, they carved a main canal that ran for nearly half a mile, following the natural contour of the mountain to deliver the water to the heart of the city. But here lies the true miracle of the system: its gradient. The Inca built this canal with an average slope of just 3%. For every 100 feet the canal traveled, it dropped only 3 feet in elevation. This was not a guess. It was a calculated, breathtakingly consistent grade, achieved with nothing more than simple tools and profound observational skill. Imagine the patience required to survey such a gentle, unwavering slope across the rugged, uneven terrain of a mountain. This shallow gradient was the key to everything. A steeper drop would have made the water flow too fast, causing erosion that would have quickly destroyed the stone channels. A flatter path, and the water would have stagnated, becoming a breeding ground for disease. The 3% grade created the perfect, steady flow, fast enough to keep the water fresh and clear, but slow enough to preserve the delicate stonework for centuries. This was the city's lifeblood, a constant, gentle stream engineered into existence. The water did not simply arrive, it was choreographed, entering the urban space with a quiet, controlled grace that sustained every aspect of life within the royal sanctuary. This water, so carefully guided, found its ultimate purpose in the city's spiritual heart, the Temple of the Sun. Here, the abstract principles of Inca engineering crystallize into a single, breathtaking structure. It is not a massive pyramid, but a masterwork of intimate precision, a curved wall of flawless ashlar masonry built directly into a natural granite outcrop. This semicircular design was no architectural whim. It was a deliberate echo of the sun's own cyclical journey, a stone embrace for the celestial body they worshipped as a god. At the very center of this temple, the floor is not made of fitted stones. It is the living bedrock of the mountain itself, carved and polished into a complex altar with steps and niches. This was the Holy of Holies, a place where the human-made and the divinely given became one single sacred entity. But the temple's true genius is revealed by its alignment with the sky. During the June solstice, the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, a precisely shaped window in the temple's wall captures the first rays of the rising sun. A single blade of light pierces the darkness, striking a specific point on that intricately carved altar stone. It is a moment of perfect alignment, a calendar event written in light and stone, confirming the Incas' profound understanding of the cosmos. Another window is oriented to frame the Pleiades star cluster, whose appearance in the night sky dictated the timing of their most important festivals and planting cycles. Can you see the layers of intention at work? This was not just a beautiful building. It was a functional astronomical observatory, a spiritual conduit, and a statement of royal power, all fused together. The same stone that anchored the temple to the mountain also served as a celestial marker. The same window that illuminated the interior also measured the turning of the year. In the Temple of the Sun, we see the Inca Vision made manifest, a perfect fusion of earth, sky, and human ambition, proving that their greatest strength was not just moving mountains, but listening to the universe. Yet this celestial clockwork demanded a more permanent anchor, a stone needle to hold the sun in its place. The Intihuatana stone rises from the highest point of the city's sacred plaza, a single, breathtaking piece of granite sculpted directly from the mountain's own spine. This was no ordinary altar. Its name means the hitching post of the sun, and it functioned as the spiritual and astronomical heart of Machu Picchu. Picture a complex, multi-angled pillar, meticulously carved with planes and corners that correspond precisely to the four cardinal directions. It is a three-dimensional map of the cosmos, a solid embodiment of Inca cosmology. During the equinoxes, the 2 days of the year when day and night are of equal length, the stone casts no shadow at all at midday. It stands in perfect, shadowless harmony with the sun directly overhead, a moment of celestial balance that the priests could observe and celebrate. On the solstices, the stone's carefully shaped angles would cast shadows in specific, meaningful directions, marking the sun's furthest reach in its yearly journey. This was not passive observation. It was an active, ritual engagement with the heavens. The Inca believed the sun needed to be tethered at these critical turning points of the year, secured to this stone post to ensure its return and the continuation of the seasons. Can you see the immense responsibility placed upon this single piece of rock? The entire agricultural cycle, the calendar of festivals, the very order of the world was thought to depend on the proper rituals performed here. But this sacred stone bears a visible scar. Its tip is broken, sheared off cleanly. For centuries, this damage was a profound mystery. We now know it was likely the result of a tragic, careless act in the early 20th century. During the filming of a movie, a heavy piece of equipment was accidentally dropped onto the stone, snapping its pinnacle. The loss is immeasurable. We can only wonder what final, precise alignment was lost with that broken tip, what ultimate secret of the sun's path was forever silenced. The Intihuatana stands today as a silent witness, a monument to both an incredible understanding of the sky and the fragile nature of the treasures we inherit from the past. Descending from the sacred plaza, the stonework underfoot begins to tell a different story. This is the residential sector, where the elite of Machu Picchu lived in homes that were both fortresses and sanctuaries. The same ashlar masonry used in the temples is present here, but it is applied with a domestic intimacy. The walls are slightly lower, the spaces more enclosed, creating a world of quiet privilege high above the clouds. For the priests and nobles who served the emperor, every aspect of their dwelling was engineered for comfort, security, and a constant reminder of their exalted status. Walk through one of the characteristic trapezoidal doorways, a shape that defines Inca architecture. These doors are narrower at the top than the bottom, a brilliant structural solution. This unique form massively increases the door's strength, distributing the immense weight of the stone lintel above down through the angled sides and into the sturdy walls. It is far more resistant to seismic shaking than a rectangular opening would be. The same intelligent design applies to the niches and windows. Each one is a perfect trapezoid, providing stable shelving carved directly into the fabric of the wall itself. Inside, these niches would have held precious ceremonial items, golden ornaments, or the simple, personal effects of a noble family. The rooms themselves are not large by modern standards, but their construction is exquisite. The stones are fitted with the same painstaking precision found in the Sun Temple, creating a seamless, polished interior that feels both powerful and serene. Can you sense the atmosphere this masonry created? It was a space that was cool in the Andean heat, secure from the elements, and utterly silent, the thick, mortarless walls absorbing all sound from outside. But the true luxury of these homes was their location. They are positioned on the terraced slopes just below the main ceremonial centers, a strategic placement that offered two profound advantages. First, it provided unparalleled privacy, separating the elite from the artisans and laborers who lived in more modest quarters elsewhere. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it guaranteed every resident a breathtaking, uninterrupted view of the sacred mountains, the Apus that surrounded them. From their doorways, they could observe the celestial events in the sky above and the deep, spiritual valley below. Their daily life was framed by the very deities they worshipped. This was the ultimate expression of Inca power, not just to build with stone, but to curate an entire existence, weaving the practical needs of shelter into a tapestry of divine connection and unassailable social standing. Yet this world of elite tranquility was built upon a foundation of constant, skilled labor. Just beyond the refined residential quarters lies the industrial zone, an area humming with a different kind of energy. Here, the stonework tells a new story. The perfectly fitted ashlar blocks give way to a simpler, rougher construction known as perca masonry. These walls are made from fieldstones, gathered from the surrounding slopes and piled together with clay and mud mortar to fill the gaps. The surfaces are irregular, the lines less precise. This was not a place for celestial observation or royal ceremony. This was the city's workshop, its practical heart. Within these functional enclosures, artisans transformed raw materials into the goods that sustain the complex society above them. In one area, you would have found the metal workers, skilled smiths using simple blowpipes to superheat small clay furnaces, melting and alloying copper and tin to create bronze tools and ceremonial objects. In another, stonemakers pecked away at granite and obsidian, shaping everything from humble grinding stones to exquisite ceremonial knives. The evidence of their work is everywhere, in the form of unfinished artifacts and piles of stone debris, the detritus of daily creation. This architectural distinction speaks volumes about the social hierarchy of Machu Picchu. The elite lived amidst precision, cut stone that symbolized permanence, divinity, and power. The artisans and laborers who served them worked in buildings of rougher, more expedient construction. Their spaces were purely functional, designed for utility and strength, not for spiritual contemplation. Can you hear the contrast between the two worlds? The silent, polished halls of the residential sector against the percussive sounds of hammers and the low roar of furnaces in the industrial zone. One was a space for being, the other a space for doing. This division was not an accident. It was a physical manifestation of the Inca social order, where one's role and status were literally built into the walls that surrounded them. Every beautiful object that graced a noble's niche, every bronze tool used in the city's upkeep, began its life here, in these unassuming workshops where practicality was the highest form of art. But this dialogue between the human and the divine extends far beyond the polished walls of temples and homes. In a quiet corner of the city, away from the main plazas, rests a monument of a different kind. The sacred rock is not a towering sculpture or a carved altar. It is a massive, low-lying outcrop of granite, left largely in its natural state. At first glance, it seems unremarkable, a simple stone platform. But step back and align your view, and the true magic reveals itself. The long, gentle slope of the sacred rock's surface is a perfect, mirror image duplicate of the silhouette of Yanantin Mountain, the majestic peak that rises directly behind it. The Inca did not carve this rock into a new shape. They simply revealed the shape that was already there, highlighting a profound resonance between the mountain's spirit and the stone at its feet. This was not architecture imposed upon the landscape. It was architecture as an act of listening, a way of making the invisible bonds of the world visible. The spiritual significance is overwhelming. In the Inca worldview, powerful spirits, or huacas, resided in natural features like springs, caves, and mountains. The sacred rock was a focal point, a place where the essence of the distant Apu was made present and touchable. Can you feel the power of that connection? A priest or pilgrim could come here and physically lay their hands upon a piece of the mountain's soul, bridging the gap between the human realm and the divine. It served as a spiritual amplifier, a direct line to the deity that watched over the city. This symbolic act of mirroring was a core principle of Inca design. Their structures did not seek to dominate the environment. They sought to complete it, to enter into a conversation with the contours of the earth itself. The sacred rock is perhaps the purest expression of this philosophy, a humble yet profound statement that the greatest art was not to build something new, but to recognize the sacredness that was already there. That same philosophy of sacred alignment guided every approach to the city. After days of arduous travel along the Royal Inca Trail, weary pilgrims and officials would face one final ascent, a steep stone staircase carved into the mountain's spine. At the summit, they would pass through the Intipanku, the Gate of the Sun. This was not a defensive barrier with heavy doors and bolts. It was a ceremonial threshold, a portal of perception built to frame one of the most powerful experiences in the ancient world. The structure itself is a masterpiece of intentional design. Two large stone frames stand on either side of the trail, creating a narrow, trapezoidal passageway that every traveler was forced to walk through single file. Its location was no accident. Perched high on the mountain ridge, the gate is perfectly oriented to capture the rising sun during the summer solstice, transforming the entrance into a celestial event. But its true power was psychological. After the physical exertion of the climb, a traveler would step through this stone doorway and the world would suddenly open up. The entire city of Machu Picchu would be laid out before them, perfectly centered in the frame of the gateway, with the iconic peak of Huayna Picchu rising directly behind it. Can you envision that first, breathtaking glimpse? The city appears not as a random collection of buildings, but as a divine composition, a hidden world revealed all at once. This was a controlled revelation, a moment staged by Inca architects to overwhelm the senses and cement the city's status as a sacred sanctuary. It was the ultimate welcome, but also the ultimate assertion of power. You did not simply stumble upon Machu Picchu. You were granted a view of it, only after you had proven your dedication by completing the journey and passing through the sun's own gate. Every stone in the Intipanku was placed to command reverence, transforming the act of arrival into a ritual of awe. This precise division of space was no accident, but the physical expression of a deeply organized worldview. Machu Picchu's breathtaking beauty conceals a hidden urban grid, a master plan of staggering clarity and purpose. The city is not a chaotic jumble of structures. It is cleanly and deliberately divided into three distinct sectors, each with a vital role in the city's function. To the south, vast agricultural terraces cascade down the mountainside, the city's life support system. The central saddle of the ridge holds the urban core, a dense collection of homes, workshops, and plazas where daily life unfolded. And to the north, elevated and separated by a wide, grassy plaza, rests the sacred religious sector, home to the Temple of the Sun and the Intihuatana stone. This was not a simple zoning plan. It was a spiritual and social hierarchy carved into the land itself, moving from the practical earth of the farms, through the human community of the urban zone, and finally ascending to the divine realm of the temples. Can you see the symbolic journey this layout creates? Every resident and visitor physically enacted this progression, moving from sustenance to society to the sacred, a daily reinforcement of the Inca cosmic order. Connecting these three worlds was a network of pathways and stairways that functioned like a circulatory system. Over 100 stone staircases, some with over 100 steps, crisscross the city. These are not random paths. They form a logical, hierarchical network. Wider, more formal staircases lead to the important temples and royal residences, while narrower, steeper steps service the agricultural terraces and simpler homes. This created an intuitive flow, directing foot traffic and ensuring that movement through the city reinforced its social structure. A priest would walk a different, more ceremonious route than a farmer carrying produce from the terraces. But the true genius of this flow lies in what you cannot easily see. Interwoven with these pathways is another, even more vital network, the system of water channels. 16 beautifully carved stone fountains line the main ceremonial pathway leading from the urban sector to the religious heart. Each fountain was fed by the main canal, with secondary channels branching off to supply water to the residential compounds. This was not just a utility, it was a choreographed experience. The water began its journey at the sacred spring high on the mountain, a divine source. It then flowed through the Temple of the Sun, further sanctifying it, before being channeled down through the fountains for public and elite use. The act of collecting water became a ritual, a daily engagement with a resource that was both practical and holy. The sound of flowing water was a constant in the city, a quiet, living music that tied every sector together, from the hum of the agricultural fields to the silence of the highest temples, binding the entire city into a single, flowing, and perfectly ordered whole. This architectural dance with disaster is written into the very geometry of the stones. Walk through any doorway in Machu Picchu and you are passing through a seismic secret. Those iconic trapezoidal shapes, wider at the base and tapering toward the top, are not just an aesthetic choice. They are a calculated defense. A rectangular doorway under stress acts like a rigid box. When an earthquake's violent energy hits it, the corners become points of maximum pressure, and the entire structure is prone to cracking and collapsing. But a trapezoid is a more dynamic, stable form. The inward-sloping sides channel the immense weight of the wall and the seismic forces downward and inward, back toward the core of the structure, effectively locking the massive stone lintel in place. The entire doorway becomes a single, unified unit that resists shaking by its very shape. This same brilliant principle applies to every window and niche in the city. They are all designed as miniature fortresses against tremors. Now, look beyond the doorways to the walls themselves. They do not stand perfectly vertical. Each one possesses a subtle, almost imperceptible inward lean. This was not a construction error, it was a masterstroke of engineering. This slight tilt, often just a few degrees, shifts the center of gravity of the entire wall inward, toward the mountain it is built upon. During an earthquake, when the ground lurches violently side to side. A vertical wall wants to topple over, but an inward-leaning wall is pushed back down into its foundation. It is compelled to settle, not to fall. The energy of the quake is transformed from a destructive, overturning force into a consolidating one, pressing the stones more tightly together. Can you feel the intelligence in that counterintuitive design? The builders were not trying to create rigid, unyielding structures. They were creating flexible, living systems. The final, most critical element is the joinery itself. The complex, polygonal faces of the ashlar blocks, fitting together without mortar, create a surface of microscopic contact points and tiny, interlocking teeth. When a tremor hits, these stones do not behave as a single, monolithic wall. They behave as a collection of individual blocks, each one free to shift minutely, to vibrate and sway independently. They bounce and jostle against each other, dissipating the seismic energy as friction and movement. The wall literally dances, the stones stepping and settling in a chaotic, microscopic ballet that prevents a catastrophic, unified failure. When the shaking stops, gravity and the precise fit simply pull each stone back into its designated place. This is why these walls still stand. They were designed not to resist the mountain's power, but to join its rhythm, to be a permanent part of the Earth's endless, shifting conversation. This perfection of fit leads to one of the greatest unresolved questions at Machu Picchu. How did the Inca achieve such impossible precision without modern measuring tools, without even a written plan to follow? The secret may lie not in a single tool, but in a sophisticated process of iterative craftsmanship, a dance between the stone and the artisan. One compelling theory suggests the use of clay or soft stone models. A master mason might have first shaped a small, handheld model of the intended wall section. This model would serve as a three-dimensional blueprint, a tangible guide for the overall design. Then, for each specific stone, the mason could have created a negative mold from clay, pressing it against the empty space in the wall to capture its exact, complex shape. The stonecutters would then work to shape a new block until it perfectly matched this unique clay impression. It was a process of constant comparison, a physical feedback loop that translated a grand vision into a perfect stone-by-stone reality. Another theory points to an intricate, yet simple, measuring system. The Inca used knotted strings called quipus for record-keeping, and they may have employed a similar concept for masonry. Craftsmen could have used sets of cords with knots placed at specific lengths to take precise measurements of a gap. They would then transfer these measurements directly onto a raw stone block, using the knotted string as a living, flexible ruler to mark where to peck and grind. This would allow for a surprising degree of accuracy and repeatability across a massive construction site. But the most likely answer combines all these ideas into a patient, relentless cycle. The process probably began with a careful selection of a stone from the quarry that was roughly the right size and shape. It would be moved to the wall and placed on a bed of sand adjacent to its future neighbors. The masons would then trace the outline of the gap directly onto the new stone's surface. They would lift the block away, carve along the traced lines, and then place it back into the gap to check the fit. This sequence of trace, carve, and test would be repeated dozens, perhaps even hundreds of times for a single stone. The final, flawless fit was not achieved in one brilliant moment, but through 1,000 tiny adjustments. You can almost hear the quiet patience of this work, the gentle scraping sound as a mason sands down a final high spot, the soft thud of a stone settling into its eternal home. This was not construction as we understand it today. It was a form of sculptural conversation, a dialogue between human intention and the innate character of the granite, where the only thing that mattered was the silent, perfect embrace between two stones. Tucked away in its own secluded precinct, the Eclahuasi stands as a fortress of both privilege and devotion. Its walls are among the finest in the entire city, constructed with a tight, polished ashlar masonry reserved for the most sacred and elite spaces. This was not a residential sector for nobles, but the house of the chosen women, a carefully guarded compound physically and symbolically set apart from the daily life of Machu Picchu. Access was highly restricted, with a single formal entrance controlling all movement in and out. This separation was deliberate, marking the inhabitants, the Incas, as individuals removed from ordinary society and dedicated entirely to the service of the state and the sun god, Inti. Their existence was one of sacred seclusion, and the architecture itself enforced this profound isolation. The quality of the stonework here speaks of immense reverence. The walls are tall and seamlessly joined, creating serene, silent courtyards and interiors that felt worlds away from the bustling industrial zone or even the elite homes. Can you sense the atmosphere this was designed to create? It was a world of ritual purity, a cloistered environment where the chosen were protected and prepared for their vital roles. Within these exquisite walls, the Incas led lives of intense productivity and spiritual significance. They were master weavers, producing the finest textiles in the empire from luxurious vicuña wool. This was not mere craft, it was a sacred art. The textiles they created, known as campi, were imbued with religious meaning and worn only by the emperor and the highest priests. Each intricate pattern, each brilliant dye, was a coded language of cosmology and power, but their role extended far beyond the loom. These chosen women were also key participants in the most important religious ceremonies that gave Machu Picchu its purpose. They brewed the chicha, a sacred maize beer, for ritual offerings and feasts. They were custodians of the sacred fire, and some were selected to become secondary wives of the emperor or human sacrifices in the most extreme ceremonies of propitiation to the gods. Their compound was not just a workshop or a dormitory. It was an engine of divine service, a place where human skill was dedicated to sustaining the spiritual and political order of the entire sanctuary. Every perfect stone in the Incas was laid to honor this sacred work, ensuring that the hands that wove the empire's most potent symbols operated in an environment worthy of their celestial responsibility. This philosophy of mirroring the landscape finds its most dramatic expression in the Condor Temple. Here, the line between what nature provided and what humanity built dissolves completely. The Inca did not construct a temple from the ground up. They recognized a sacred form already present in the living rock. Two immense, tilted slabs of natural granite jut out from the earth, soaring upwards to form a pair of vast open wings. The Inca builders saw the spirit of the condor, the sacred messenger who carried prayers to the upper world, captured forever in this stone. Their architectural intervention was one of subtle enhancement, not overpowering creation. They carved the rock at the base of these wings to resemble the condor's head and neck, completing the celestial bird's form. The open area before this great stone bird became the temple's ceremonial plaza, a space for rituals performed directly beneath its outstretched wings. Can you feel the power of that intention? A priest standing here was not just in a building dedicated to the condor. He was physically standing in the presence of the condor itself, a form made by the mountain and acknowledged by human hands. This is the ultimate example of the Incas' core architectural principle. They were not conquerors of the landscape, but its interpreters. Their genius lay in their ability to listen to the mountain, to see the divine shapes hidden within its granite bones, and with a few precise carvings, to reveal those forms for all to witness. The Condor Temple is more than a building. It is a collaboration, a permanent dialogue between human reverence and the natural world, proving that the most profound sacred spaces are not built, but discovered. That same reverence for water required a plan for when the heavens opened. Beneath the beautiful green terraces and the grand stone plazas lies a hidden city, a subterranean world engineered for one purpose: to vanish water. This is Machu Picchu's secret masterpiece, a drainage system so comprehensive it functioned like a second, inverted city. Every single structure was part of this hydrological plan. The Inca understood that during the ferocious Andean rainy season, the mountain ridge could transform from a sanctuary into a deadly waterfall. Their solution was to give all that water a clear, irresistible path to leave. Start with the terraces you already know. Each one was not just a garden, but a massive layered drain. The fertile soil sat atop a deep bed of crushed stone, a hidden reservoir that could absorb and channel immense volumes of water. But the true genius lies in what you cannot see. At the bottom of each terrace wall, built directly into its foundation, are carefully placed drainage holes. These were not random gaps. They were precisely sized stone conduits that allowed the water collecting in the gravel bed to escape steadily, preventing it from ever building up enough pressure to push the wall outward. The water released from these holes would then be captured by another network of stone-lined channels running along the back of the terrace below, creating a cascading chain that guided the water safely down the entire mountainside, turning a potential mudslide into a managed, gentle flow. Now move to the plazas and courtyards. You might walk across them and see only flat, open spaces, but look closer at the ground. The Inca never built a truly flat surface. Every single plaza, every pathway, has a subtle, almost invisible slope. This gradient was meticulously calculated, just like the main aqueduct, to pull rainwater away from the important structures and toward the edges. There, the water would encounter more stone channels, often hidden beneath the walkways, which would whisk it away to join the main drainage streams. In places where water naturally collected, the engineers built soakaways, deep pits filled with loose rock that acted like ancient septic tanks for stormwater. These pits would allow the water to percolate slowly, safely back into the earth, rather than eroding the slopes below. Can you hear the difference this system made? In a modern city, a heavy rain brings the roar of water rushing through gutters and drains. At Machu Picchu, the water was meant to be silent and unseen. It was a ghost in the stone, guided on a preordained journey from the moment it touched the soil until it was returned to the river far below. This is why the city never flooded. This is why the walls never bulged from saturated ground. The entire mountain ridge was transformed into a giant, sloping filter. Every element, from the grandest temple to the smallest step, was part of an integrated water disposal machine, a testament to a civilization that knew the most important part of building for eternity was knowing how to let go. The silent perfection of its stonework masks a frantic, multi-generational race against time. So how many years did it actually take to build this mountain sanctuary? The answer is carved into the walls themselves, if you know where to look. Archaeologists studying the stonework have identified distinct construction phases, revealing a story of evolution rather than a single master-planned project. The most compelling estimates suggest a timeline between 30 and 90 years, a vast window that speaks to the project's immense complexity. The earliest structures are often found on the city's periphery, built with simpler, rougher perca masonry. These were likely the initial support buildings, the temporary shelters and workshops for the first wave of laborers who arrived to tame the ridge. As the workforce grew and the site was secured, the focus shifted inward. The foundational work, the back-breaking labor of quarrying, terracing, and establishing the water system, probably consumed the first decade or more. This was the unseen, subterranean effort that made everything else possible. Can you envision the landscape in this first phase? A chaotic hive of activity where the primary goal was simply to create a stable, habitable platform from the raw mountain. The grand ceremonial structures, the temples and royal residences built with the finest ashlar masonry, almost certainly came later. This was the phase of refinement, when the most skilled masons arrived to execute the sacred vision. The difference in stonework between a storage building and the Temple of the Sun is not just a matter of function. It is a timestamp. One represents the pragmatic beginning, the other the glorious culmination. This phased approach solves a great logistical puzzle. It suggests that Machu Picchu was not built all at once by a static army of workers, but by a rotating, evolving force. The initial crews prepared the ground, and successive waves, under the direction of master architects, layered on the complexity. The entire project was likely completed within the lifespan of a single emperor, Pachacuti, who was credited with its conception. A 90-year timeline would have meant the work began under his command and was finished under his successor, a testament to the enduring power of his vision. This was not a sprint, but a relay race across generations, where thousands of hands passed the baton of ambition, each one adding a stone to a dream that would long outlive them. Those thousands of hands belonged to a workforce of remarkable organization and dedication, a civilization in motion. The people who built Machu Picchu were not slaves driven by a whip, but subjects of the Inca Empire fulfilling a sacred civic duty known as the mita. Think of it as a rotational tax, but one paid in labor, not in crops or gold. Every household across the vast empire was obligated to provide a certain number of workers for set periods, often a few months at a time. This system created a constantly rotating stream of manpower, a river of human energy that could be directed to build roads, terrace mountains, or raise temples. It was a social contract on an imperial scale, a way to harness the collective power of millions for projects that no single community could ever accomplish alone. These mita laborers would travel from their home villages, often for weeks, to reach the construction site. They did not arrive as a chaotic mob. They were organized into highly structured work crews, known as islas, which were essentially extended family clans or communities. Each ilu had its own leader and was assigned specialized tasks based on their traditional skills. A community known for its stonemasons would be sent to the quarries. Another with a reputation for agricultural terracing would be put to work sculpting the mountainside. Another might be tasked with the grueling work of hauling materials. This division of labor was not just efficient, it was a way of ensuring quality through generations of inherited knowledge. Can you see the immense social coordination this required? It was a project managed without paper, without telephones, relying entirely on a shared cultural understanding and a chain of command that stretched from the emperor down to the local foreman. The living conditions for these workers were starkly different from the elite quarters they were building. They resided in temporary, simple settlements located on the periphery of the main site, structures built with the same rough perca masonry used in the industrial zone. Their lives were a cycle of arduous work, basic meals and rest. Yet, this labor was not seen as a crushing burden. Within the Inca worldview, contributing to a project for the emperor, who was a living god, and for the sun god Intai, was an act of profound religious and social significance. It was a way to earn honor for one's family and community, to participate in something eternal. Building Machu Picchu was not just a construction job, it was a pilgrimage of work, a physical prayer that connected every corner of the empire to the celestial sanctuary taking shape in the clouds. The rhythmic sounds of construction faded, and an even deeper silence fell over the mountain. Machu Picchu's greatest mystery is not how it was built, but why it was so completely and perfectly abandoned. This was not a city destroyed by war or a natural disaster. It was a place meticulously tidied up and left behind, as if its inhabitants simply walked away, allowing the jungle to reclaim its stone corridors. The enigma of its desertion is a puzzle with several compelling pieces, each pointing to a different kind of end. The most dramatic theory points to the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors in the 1630s. As their forces swept through the Inca Empire, toppling the capital of Cusco and dismantling the imperial system, it is easy to imagine the elite priests and nobles at Machu Picchu receiving a frantic message. The world they knew was collapsing. The emperor was gone, the army defeated. In this scenario, the residents would have gathered their most sacred objects, performed one final ceremony, and then retreated deeper into the jungle, leaving the empty city as a ghost to avoid its desecration by the foreign invaders. Yet, there is a haunting problem with this theory. The Spanish, for all their relentless searching for Inca gold, never seem to have found Machu Picchu. There are no records of its discovery, no accounts of a battle on its sacred plaza. This hidden sanctuary was so well concealed by the mountains that it escaped the notice of the very forces that destroyed the empire that built it. If the Spanish never found it, why leave? This leads to a quieter, more insidious possibility. European diseases like smallpox raced ahead of the Spanish soldiers, carried along trade routes by people who had never seen a European face. These illnesses devastated the native population, who had no immunity. It is possible that a plague swept through Machu Picchu, killing so many so quickly that the few survivors, their social order shattered, simply could not sustain life in such a remote and demanding place. They may have dispersed to lower or more accessible villages, leaving the city to the elements, but the most profound theory suggests the end was not sudden, but scheduled. Machu Picchu was a royal estate, intimately tied to the Emperor Pachacuti. In the Inca worldview, a palace was not necessarily an eternal inheritance. It was the personal property of the ruler who commissioned it. When that emperor died, his lineage might maintain it for a time, but its primary purpose as an active retreat died with him. The focus of the empire would shift to the new emperor and his own building projects. The slow, deliberate depopulation of Machu Picchu could have already been underway, a gradual drawing down of its staff and resources, long before the Spanish ever set foot in the Americas. The conquest may have only been the final, abrupt period at the end of a sentence that was already being written. So which was it? Was it a frantic flight from an unseen enemy, a silent surrender to disease, or a planned obsolescence written into its very royal DNA? The truth is, these theories are not mutually exclusive. The slow departure of a royal court could have been violently accelerated by the twin storms of disease and invasion. The city did not have a single cause of death, but a cascade of failures. Its perfect preservation is our gain, but it was born from a profound and collective loss, a deliberate vanishing act that left one of the world's most beautiful questions carved in stone, waiting centuries for anyone to ask it. That deliberate vanishing act worked for centuries, until a sun-baked morning in July of 1911. On that day, a young American explorer named Hiram Bingham, led by a local Quechua farmer named Melchor Artiga, was guided up the steep, jungle-choked slopes. What he found was not a lost city, but a lost world, shrouded in vines and mist. The story of its modern rediscovery is as layered and contested as the city's own origins. Bingham, a historian from Yale University, was not actually looking for Machu Picchu. He was on a quest for Vilcabamba, the last refuge of the Inca rebels. When Artiga led him to the overgrown terraces and pristine walls, Bingham believed he had found it. He returned with National Geographic, and his subsequent publications and photographs catapulted the site to international fame, making his name synonymous with its discovery. But here lies the controversy. Was Bingham truly the first outsider to find it? Evidence suggests he was not. Local families were living on and farming the terraces when he arrived. They knew the city was there, a part of their ancestral landscape. Furthermore, names and graffiti carved into the stones show that other Westerners, like German adventurer Augusto Burns, had likely been to the site decades earlier, lured by rumors of Inca gold. Bingham's great contribution was not the act of finding, but the act of revealing. He brought the scientific and media power to excavate, photograph, and introduce Machu Picchu to the global stage, forever changing its destiny. This revelation sparked a firestorm of fascination that burns hotter than ever today. Millions of pilgrims now walk the paths where only a handful of farmers once tread. This modern fame is a double-edged sword. The revenue from tourism is a vital part of Peru's economy, funding preservation efforts and providing livelihoods. But the sheer weight of human presence creates an immense strain. The constant footfall erodes ancient stone steps. The humidity from the breath of thousands of visitors can degrade the very mortarless joints that have survived earthquakes. The question we face now is a profound one. How do you preserve a sacred sanctuary while sharing it with the world? The answer lies in a new kind of listening, not to the mountain alone, but to the living descendants of the people who built it. Modern conservation is increasingly guided by both science and the deep cultural knowledge of the Quechua communities, the true inheritors of the Inca legacy. Their understanding of the site's spiritual purpose is as crucial to its preservation as any geological survey. The story of Machu Picchu is no longer just about a forgotten city found. It is about a living culture reclaiming its voice in the conversation about its own past, ensuring that the sanctuary's future is not just preserved in stone, but understood in spirit. Machu Picchu is more than a collection of ruins. It is a permanent lesson in stone. Every secret we have uncovered, from the earthquake-resistant walls that dance with the mountain to the water channels carved with a 3% slope, reveals a civilization that saw no division between engineering and spirituality, between human ambition and the sacred landscape. Their genius was not in overpowering nature, but in listening to it, in a profound collaboration that turned geological instability into a source of building materials and spiritual alignment into a master plan. This was made possible by a society that could mobilize thousands through the Meta system, coordinating that collective will with a precision that allowed them to haul impossible stones and fit them together with a patience we can scarcely comprehend. The city stands as a testament to the Incas' holistic vision, where a terrace was both a farm and a fortress. A temple was also a calendar, and a single rock could mirror an entire mountain. It challenges our modern assumptions about what is possible, reminding us that true endurance comes from harmony, not just force. So, of all these incredible building secrets, which one captured your imagination the most? Was it the silent, seismic dance of the Ashlar Masonry, the celestial alignment of the Intihuatana stone, or the sheer logistical triumph of the quarry and the ramps? Share the secret that fascinated you most in the comments below, and keep the conversation with this ancient wonder alive.